No, everybody's watching the clock. They're like 30 seconds till.
What for you?
So, all right, hear ye, hear ye. Welcome to the GRCC Community Board meeting on February 21st, 2022. As you can see, Dave Cucci and Cheryl are not here today, but nevertheless, you guys are in good hands.
Yes.
So with that, I'd like to ask the board members, are there any guests you'd like to recognize? Today is winter break at East Kentwood High School, so my daughter is watching virtually. So hi to my daughter out there. Dr. Pink, do you have any guests?
I do have a guest, and I will introduce her a little bit deeper under my president's report. But with us today is our new Michigan Community College Association president, Brandy Johnson. But I'll talk a little bit more about her during my report.
Look forward to hearing from Brandy. So our first order of business today is the approval of the agenda. Trustees, please note that this is the time to remove any item from the consent agenda for separate consideration if necessary. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda? None. That being the case, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
So
Second.
it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. This is the point of the meeting where we ask for public comment. Is there anyone out there that would like to make a public comment? Seeing no one moving toward the podium, we'll go to the next order of business, which is the special order of business. At the January work session, the group discussed keeping the current officers for another 4 years. As of November 2022, there will be 4 seats up for re-election. I'd like to open the floor for any additional discussion and a call for the motion. As you guys may recall, the current officers are Dave Cucci as chairperson, Kenyatta Brame as vice chairperson, Kathleen Bruinsma as secretary, then Cheryl Seeger as treasurer. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and supported. All in favor of that slate of officers, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, now we're going to jump to the mid-year budget. Lisa, the floor is yours.
And good afternoon. Leave it on. Take that off. Thank you. We are going to walk through the proposed budget amendment or mid-year budget for this fiscal year 21-22. You received a number of documents in your packet. We're actually going to walk through the PowerPoint together, but you received the actual document, which is the line-by-line budget for all funds within the college. That is actually what we'll be asking you to approve. The PowerPoint summarizes primarily general fund. And then you also received a narrative which describes general fund more in words, going through in the changes in revenue and expense. They are all the same financial information, just presented to you in several different ways, depending on how you'd like to walk through it. So again, we'll go through the PowerPoint briefly, but would be happy to answer any questions that you might have on any of it if you had a chance to go through when anything came up. With that, okay, perfect. With the PowerPoint, you'll see that we're going to spend just a few minutes talking about this fiscal year, the budget amendment for 21-22, proposed revenue and expense changes, as well as the summary. A couple points on some of our other funds, although we'll spend most of our time on general fund, which is our primary operating fund, and then spend just a few minutes talking about what we're looking at for 22-23. We are in active preparation of the 22-23 budget now, and want to just give you a little bit of an update on that before we close. With that, looking at 21-22 mid-year budget adjustment proposed, As you know, we have three primary revenue sources: our tuition and fees, our property tax, and our state aid. Tuition and fees, we are up fairly significantly. You will see in the line item budget a proposed increase in our anticipated tuition and fee revenue of $1.7 million. That is due in large part to a significant increase in the second summer for this budget amendment. We talked previously about how our summer enrollment surpassed even 2019, so pre-pandemic. The second half of that summer enrollment occurs in this fiscal year. We split the summer. So there is a large increase related to second summer, if you will, about 7,000 billing units. There is also an increase in fall that you can see up there. Our fall of 2021 was up about 4% over fall of 2020 billing units, which is how we quantify tuition revenue. Our winter 2022 remained flat. So our winter 2022 was virtually even with winter of 2021. But we do see a significant increase, about 5,000 billing units for fall of 2021. There is a related increase in our differential tuition. That is the tuition increase that we charge on our higher cost programs, dental, nursing, and culinary specifically. And then an increase in our concurrent and middle college concurrent tuition or concurrent enrollment is where we have our faculty out at high school sites teaching. And then middle college is where we have a comprehensive middle college program, again, primarily out at different sites. There's a different tuition structure for those activities, and you'll see we had a small increase there as well. Job training and construction trades also up. Good news for there. They were up in both terms. And then you'll see our fee revenue up. We did for fall of 2021, our final time, but we waived online fees and used our HERF or our federal stimulus money to cover all student online fees for fall of 2021. And you will see those revenues, those dollars coming in and an increase in your fee revenue budget. The only other thing to point out on the revenue side of the equation is a change. You'll see an increase in our state aid that is directly related to our MIPSers or our state retirement plan. And if you'll remember, there is an accrued unfunded liability. The state sends us revenue and then we turn around and send it back to them in the form of retirement expense. So they adjust that every year based on our proportion of MIPSers or state retirement system payroll, as opposed to all of our community college peers. And then that number goes up or down a little bit. So you will see that adjustment there, and then you'll see a similar adjustment in the expense side of the equation. That number is approximating $7 million now. So that's a big number coming through for us in revenue and expense, and significantly inflates, if you will, state aid revenue and retirement expense. And then investment earnings, we're continuing to reduce. The market and the conservative portfolios that we invest in just aren't generating those returns yet. We do see some change coming, but it's not significantly impacting this fiscal year. With that, on the expense side of the 21-22 budget adjustment, salaries have been adjusted throughout to accommodate staffing levels where we've had retirements and adjusting to the actual salaries as we know them. Overload and adjunct hours, you'll see an increase in the faculty line. If you look at the line by line budget, that is directly related to overload and adjunct as our revenues are up. So our billing units were up, so our adjunct and overload costs to compensate for the additional courses that we offered to handle the additional enrollment above what was originally projected. Healthcare is actually down. Our healthcare increase or our total premium increase was significantly less than we had anticipated. And then FICA and retirement, you will see changes. One for the UAL payment, we talked on the revenue side, and then just some minor adjustments to reflect the changes that we had in total salary.
Just a quick question for you. So
Sure.
I know that particularly in manufacturing, we're seeing the impact of the Great Resignation. I know certain industries are seeing a significant amount of people retire or leave their industry because of the stress that they're dealing with. In education, and specifically in GRCC, are we experiencing that at all?
We have a significant employee retirement and resignation, a large number of retirements, more than we would ever typically see in a year. And we have a number of vacancies. So we are seeing an impact from just the lack of labor market. So we have a number of openings across the board. Certainly in our SEBA or custodial maintenance ranks, we have a number of open vacancies that have been there for a large portion of the year. We have a lot of people there doing overtime, which has helped tremendously. And we continue to work on that. Some of our clerical APSS support professionals ranks, we have a number of vacancies there, as well as some in meet and confer and faculty as well. So we are certainly not missing or not exempt from the great resignation, retirement, and just the labor market that we are currently experiencing.
So this is probably more addressed to you. So what are we doing to address that gap? How are we getting more people into our pool as we experience this? And I know that's, I mean, probably everybody here in their workforce is experiencing something similar. It's not particular to education, but what are we doing to make sure we have a sufficient pool?
So different areas are doing different things. So just about a week or two ago, actually, we actually had a job fair that was focused on our SEBA employees. And from that actually had some positive hires from that. We are a bit more focused in terms of how we are advertising. One thing you'll see, and Dave Murray and his folks have done a really good job with, is some of the messaging you'll see in the community talks about coming to work at GRCC and what that means and what that could look like. And so we've kind of upped that as well. But to another part of your question, Trustee Brame, part of what we did with some of the salary savings, you'll remember weeks ago when we announced a stipend that we provided for campus. Just a thank you to say, man, we've been working at this a long time. This has been rather than being focused on what some other organizations were doing, which was taking salary savings and providing bonuses for people coming in, we decided to say, let's try to help the people we already have here and thank them for the work that they do here, to reinvest it in our own people. Much of the dollars that we used for that came from these salary savings to put that money back toward our workforce. And so we continue, and Lisa, you may even from the HR perspective, talk even more about some of those efforts we've made around advertising, hiring, and trying to, as far as attraction is concerned.
Yep, absolutely. And you hit on a number of the strategies that we have employed. We have worked with both our SEBA and our APSS union partners and looked at the salary structure temporarily and how we could bring people in on a higher pay rate temporarily. In SEBA, for example, we have a legacy pay scale as well as a new pay scale that was negotiated a number of years ago in relationship to the market that existed at that point in time. We are, again, with their consent through a memorandum of understanding, using the legacy scale to make sure that we're posting with the marketplace that we're looking at now in a competitive way. HR has expanded where we post jobs. There's a tool called Job Elephant, which is probably more than you wanted to know, but it allows us to reach posting spots that we haven't been able to reach or hadn't reached before. We are also, both from the HR posting perspective as well as with Dave Murray's help, really trying to highlight our benefit structure because that is huge here. We have tremendous benefits. So trying to capture those at the top of every posting we put out, as well as in social media to attract the attention of potential job seekers are a couple other examples.
Thank you.
Absolutely. A couple of things that I would highlight that are unusual rather than just our traditional adjustments at this point in time. There were several off-cycle mid-year allocations. Would emphasize that top bullet there are no new dollars allocated there. Those are simply reallocating the contingency funds that you approve in our budget annually. But those were reallocated to include the completion of a microfiche project over in student records, all employee records, and getting them digitized, as well as some website work and a new enrollment queue system for our enrollment center to better serve students. They're piloting that this year. So those were all things that were pulled from our current budgeted contingency dollars and moved up into those areas. We also had two other fairly significant increases, utilities being one of them, as we continue to run our HVAC systems at a higher level to promote that air exchange. Our utility bills are increasing beyond what we had projected them. You can see that there. And then I don't know if any of you remember when we had Ransom completely tore up. We have our big leak. So we had a water main leak in Ransom that was a significant and unforeseen issue that we are addressing with that $240,000 increase there. The transfers are all outlined in your separate transfer sheet. We like to break them out separately for you so you can see them clearly. We do have a transfer that is different that we incorporated into this budget amendment to account for our summer bridge program that was run last summer of 21. We had been hopeful that there might be some state aid revenue attached to that. And there wasn't, as they worked through their budget implications at the state level. Thus, we are funding that with general fund and moving that to the appropriate account. All of that, all told, you can see the summary of revenue, expenses, and ending net assets most specifically there. That brings our ending net assets to about 19% of total revenues, a good measure to keep an eye on. And then the only other thing I would see here is, as in prior years, it is certainly our pattern to not spend all of the budgeted dollars. That has been consistent since I came here. And I'm sure prior to that, we are looking at likely some significant underspending, both as a matter of course, because that is particularly in the controllables or the non-salary items that are spread out to a number of different departments across the institution. But in addition to that, we are continuing to see some pandemic related underspending, travel being a good example of that, that we will have a different type of savings this year, certainly as we're looking at budget trends now. Other funds, again, all outlined in the detailed package that you received line by line, but a couple of things that I would highlight. You will see some large adjustments for RJF for Riley J. Finkelstein Hall, as well as the Lakeshore campus. Those are not increases overall. They are simply aligning the budget to the fiscal year. With our plant fund and our large capital projects, they don't neatly break at June 30. The summer is an active construction period for us. So as we're building budgets, we are estimating the total expense that we will see and be billed from the contractor, how much work will be done prior to June 30 and post June 30. This is simply cleaning up those estimates. Both projects were brought in, completed on time and under budget. So no net increase there. And then we were able, through work of the foundation, to increase some of the scope of the Piazza project to include some work in the Heritage proper, all entirely donation funded. But you'll see that increase there, both on the revenue side, donations coming in from the foundation, and on the expense side. The other thing I should mention with both RJF and Lakeshore is that we had significant donations for both of those projects, some plant fund resources, some internal resources, but significant work through the foundation to help fund both of those projects as well. Parking revenue.
And when do we expect, what's the timeline for the Secchia project to be completed?
The Piazza proper will be done early summer. The added scope into the Heritage to enhance some of the furnishings and finishings in there will likely go through the summer, as that was kind of an add-on to the overall initial project. And then parking revenue, we are bringing down. We just aren't seeing that traffic come back to the extent that we had originally budgeted. That being said, we have appropriate resources in the parking fund to handle the construction projects, primarily renovation repair of the ramps that we maintain, that we're not concerned. Questions? Any other questions on anything current year before I leap to where we're looking at for 22-23?
I have a
Kathleen?
question about the concurrent middle college. We've got a $53,000 increase. Two questions. What accounts for that increase? Why is that an increase? And then also, where does that money come from? Remind me.
The concurrent and middle college is our tuition billing to the K-12 districts for either, again, single classes where our faculty are out teaching a single class in a high school, or Wyoming, as a good example, a full middle college program where our faculty are out at Wyoming High School teaching the full middle college program. So middle college versus concurrent. And that is simply a change in numbers. So that is, the counts are up slightly from what we had originally budgeted a year ago. So 22-23, we are actively working on that now. Just a reminder, we will continue to keep you updated. We will bring you a full picture of what we're looking at for 22-23 in early May at the full budget work session. And then depending on questions and what your need for additional information is, we would bring that for your consideration for adoption or approval in June. We are certainly looking at our primary revenue streams, projecting right now enrollment, looking at a very conservative projection of stable billing units, although are looking to, as we move forward, action plans on how we can continue to increase those billing units. From a budget perspective, we will likely budget right now at stable enrollment. Property tax increases have been fairly constant at 3 to 4%. State funding we have right now, again, these are all very preliminary. We have that right now increasing 3%. Governor came out with a 5% increase in her original budget. I do not believe that will hold necessarily at 5%. She recommended a 5% increase as well as a 5% one-time allocation. There's also some additional one-time money in her original budget proposal for infrastructure, maintenance, IT type projects. We will see over the next couple of months how that all shapes out. There are certainly significant resource at the state level beyond what they had originally projected. All that said, again, I do not believe that they will hold at 5. Salaries are incorporated right now based on settled contracts and estimates. And then we are right now projecting health insurance at approximately 2.5% for a medical CPI increase. The other thing I would mention as we're looking on the enrollment or the revenue side of things is we are actively looking at tuition. We will bring a formal tuition recommendation to you in March for your consideration. So I want to emphasize that we are not done. As you know, we continue to learn more about what revenues and expenses will look like this year, but we are certainly very mindful of where we still sit with this pandemic, and want to be very cautious with student finances, and are looking at a very modest tuition increase, potentially right now an in-district rate of $1 increase, which would be less than 1%. Again, want to emphasize we're not done, and all of that would come to you for your consideration in March. And then just a reminder, we bring that to you ahead of the budget cycle, so that our financial aid team can work with students as they're packaging, if you will, student financial aid packages for next year. So they really need that number as soon as possible. And if we would wait till June, that would put our financial aid team and our students behind as they're considering options for next year.
Bill, as you're talking to your counterparts, that 1%, is that what you're seeing other institutions looking at, or?
Yeah, 1%, and in this case, less than 1%, that's really from many of my colleagues, the low end.
Okay.
As far as what you see, usually and this is historic as well, the last several years, institutions our size are typically in this space, and some of our smaller institutions kind of sometimes hit a bit higher. So it depends on how that looks. We've been blessed. Trustees, honestly, realize it for what it is. It is a very good thing that our institution this school year has come in both fall and winter semester either flat or ahead of enrollment from last year. If you remember in the fall, we were about 4.5% up. Right now, we're a little less than 1% up. So that helps us in feeling like it's going the right direction as far as what we think about for next year. But that honestly is not the story of all of our 28 institutions in the state. So we'll continue to look at that. And that number, like I said, for our size institution and for what I've seen so far, it's pretty indicative of what we see.
I think that affordability is something that's important to all of us as board members, so we appreciate you keeping an eye on that and trying to keep costs in line with what people can actually afford. So.
Would just close with, as we continue to build 22, 23 and try to hone in on those assumptions, enrollment is still clearly one we watch very closely as we look to varying options there. State funding, we'll watch the state budget process progress through the May revenue consensus and hope that we might have a state budget in June, but we shall see. And then capital needs is also something that is very large. As we look at that plant fund, we've completed recently a campus-wide master plan. So we have a direction, a focus. We have a state capital outlay request in for our Learning Resource Center. that you approved last fall. That is a $32 million project. We are required to have half on hand in order to put that into the state. So that's clearly something we're need to hold as we watch for that to go through the system. And then we have been talking about the potential of a public safety training center and where that may go. Certainly there will be partners. We've started to talk with the state and others with that request, but that's something that's out there from a capital standpoint as well. And we are monitoring all of that as we look at our plant fund resources and how we might start to align those. With that, I would take any questions on either the PowerPoint, or if there are questions or you would like me to highlight something in that line item detail, I would be happy to. If not, that is all that I had.
Board members, any questions? Further questions for Lisa? So with that, I think we need a motion to approve the mid-year budget as presented. Sal, motion. Anyone second that? Support? All right, all in favor of accepting it as presented by Lisa, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same time sign. So Lisa, we have you next for a finance report. Is there anything additional that you like to tell the board?
I don't think so. Your January statements were incorporated in your packet. Certainly, we've gone over them in a little bit more detail as we look at where we're proposing to make budget adjustments. There is nothing significant that I would highlight beyond that and what the state has come out with in their budget, initial budget since we have last spoke. Although again, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on those monthly statements as well.
Board members, any additional questions for Lisa? All right, with that, we'll let you go. Thank you, Lisa, very much. All right, so next we're going to go to the infrastructure and sustainability reports. So we're going to ask Mansfield and Mary Jo to come on up. So
Good afternoon, trustees.
Good afternoon.
Mary Jo Chisholm and I are here to give you an update on strategic goal number 5, infrastructure and sustainability. We've recorded our presentation today, and we'd be happy to come back after the presentation to answer any questions. And Mary Jo has a couple of announcements as well.
We're joined today by some CAP champions who are also in the audience. We appreciate them being here today. And we also have some of our CAP champions that have joined us online. And we will have Victoria from Gordian, who was on the 5.3 sustainability greenhouse gas survey, and she's online also, and she'll be presenting as well.
Good afternoon, Board of Trustees. Mary Jo Chisholm, Director of Enterprise Applications, and I, Mansfield Matthewson, Director of Purchasing, are pleased to stand before you this afternoon to provide an update on strategic goal number 5, infrastructure and sustainability. We are also joined by 5.1 CAP champions Rebecca Whitman and Brandon Keynes, 5.2 CAP champions Valerie Butterfield, and 5.3 CAP champions Class Quant, Bill Faber, and Jim Van Dockenberg. We thank them for joining us. There are 3 college action projects under strategic goal number 5, which are as follows. College Action Project 5.1, improve campus safety and security. This CAP is closed. However, this CAP contains both physical and information technology components targeted at improving campus safety and security. College Action Project 5.2, investigate the effectiveness of the current enterprise system. This is an ongoing CAP. PeopleSoft has been our ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning System, for several years. This CAP is designed to assess the effectiveness of PeopleSoft from both employee and student perspectives. College Action Project 5.3, implement a campus-wide sustainability effort. This is an ongoing CAP as well. Finally, CAP 5.3 is taking a look at current institutional practices and weighing them against best practices, looking for opportunities for improvement in operations, purchasing, facilities management, culinary, etc. I will now introduce Brandon Keynes, IT Security Chief Information Security Officer, to highlight CAP 5.1.
Thank you, Mansfield, and good afternoon, everyone. As of September 2021, CAP 5.1 was closed. During the CAP, we identified and closed security gaps while increasing both physical and data security through our project achievements. Some of CAP 5.1 successes include decreasing vulnerabilities across our network, preventing loss of sensitive data, successful implementation of the external door lock system, continuous monitoring of social media for potential threats to GRCC, and increasing IT security and physical safety awareness. Although we had a lot of successes, there were some limitations. One such limitation was conducting campus-wide phishing campaigns to help improve user awareness. This is due to Gmail's robust phishing preventative capabilities, which prevented our own campaign emails from successful delivery. Seeing these emails blocked is good from a security standpoint. However, conducting our own campaigns would provide useful user awareness metrics. Because of this, potential campaign solutions will continue to be researched. And now I'll pass it over to Mary Jo.
I, Mary Jo Chisholm, along with Valerie Butterfield, are the co-chairs for CAP 5.2. CAP 5.2 was charged with investigating the sustainability of our current enterprise system, PeopleSoft. This slide highlights PeopleSoft as the central hub with ancillary systems connected to it. This year is our third and final year of the CAP. We reviewed and summarized all of the data gathered and presented an overview of observations to executive leadership. The next few slides provide 3 indicators of readiness we propose to serve as a guide to identify when would be the right time to transition to a new system. We will use these indicators as we absorb this work into the institution moving forward. Our vision is of 3 stoplights, 1 for each area. When all 3 items would move to a green state, then we would feel the institution is ready for enterprise system replacement. These indicators include 1, product readiness of next generation student enterprise systems, 2, financial readiness, and 3, institutional readiness and change management. Each of these will be discussed in subsequent slides. In our research, we discovered that the next generation of student systems are just beginning to be utilized, and others are still under development. Our suggestion is that we continue to monitor the market in order to assess when we feel these systems may be viable for our use. Since we purchased our first enterprise system, software licensing has changed from an outright purchase to a subscription-based model, similar to apps that we purchase for home entertainment, such as Netflix. Because of this model, these acquisitions have to be funded from operating expenses rather than capital expenses or bond funds, as was done in the past. System replacement is a multi-million-dollar investment. Thus, the institution needs to identify when resources are available to fund this initiative. As vendors are developing and enhancing their products, and the institution assesses their financial position, there are still steps we can take now to prepare for system replacement in the future. Some of those tasks are identified on this slide. Enterprise system replacement is very disruptive. We are told that the more we can do to prepare, the smoother transition we would have. Next, we will hear about CAP 5.3.
Jim Van Dockenberg, Dean Bill Faber, and myself have been keeping the sustainability torch aflame during some challenging times. Our goals are to identify and catalog current and past sustainability practices, review their status, benchmark our practices against other institutions, and develop a plan to move forward. The sophistication of this work required us to lean on an external vendor called Gordian, who has helped a number of colleges through 2 processes, ASHE STARS and a greenhouse gas survey. In addition to the work done and being done with Gordian's help, facilities work continues in relation to sustainability, including LEED certification of recent projects, LED lighting conversions, IDS building condition assessments, green grounds maintenance, and automating HVAC controls. We'll also be reviewing our purchasing language as it relates to sustainability. The greenhouse gas survey was just completed by Gordian in cooperation with many GRCC staff. I'm going to turn it over to Shelley Giannini so she can provide a portion of what was revealed in that very extensive survey.
This startup initiative collated data from 2016 through 2021, and it provided GRCC with a baseline snapshot of emissions performance. A greenhouse gas inventory calculates emissions across 3 scopes. Scope 1 includes emissions generated from sources controlled by GRCC, the bulk of which is typically on-campus stationary sources. Scope 2 accounts for the upstream purchase of electricity and steam. And finally, Scope 3 includes those sources of emissions that are generated from the GRCC community. On the GRCC campus, the vast majority of energy consumed is through purchased electricity and steam. Comparatively, a small volume of traditional fossil fuels are consumed. This is reflected in the associated emissions profile. The donut reflects the total emissions generated on the GRCC campus from fiscal year 16 through fiscal year 21. Bars on the right represent the distribution of the individual components by those scopes. In Scope 2, GRCC emissions attributed to steam are 65% of the emissions attributed to electricity. So electricity is not the only consumer that contributes to that total GRCC profile. We just looked at the total GRCC emissions generated from fiscal year 16 through fiscal year 21 in totality. Now we can further explore how those emissions are distributed over time. Each bar represents those emissions generated at GRCC separated by scope. And the total emissions generated from 16 through fiscal year 20 look fairly similar. However, the team recognized the importance of the role that commuters play on the GRCC campus. The commuters do leave a significant footprint in terms of the emissions that are generated by their activities. The methodology used to capture the commuter data was a first pass, but it did provide us an opportunity to develop a more accurate accounting method for commuters. As a takeaway, the commuter population is an important metric to collect and really can be a key contributor to the overall GRCC profile. Finally, there's a secondary y-axis on the right that's represented by orange diamonds. This depicts your total campus FTEs. Over time, that trend is declining. However, it does not appear that that decline in campus population correlates to a decline in emissions. The greenhouse gas inventory, again, was that first step in a broader analysis of the 3 pillars of sustainability: social, economic, and environmental. A complete STARS analysis will provide a comprehensive baseline of sustainability performance, and moving forward from there, GRCC will then have the information needed to chart a path forward that aligns with your sustainability goals.
In addition to infrastructure and sustainability work mentioned, we have also greatly improved our classroom technology to allow for different types of remote instruction. Reducing the number of individuals who have to commute, as Shelley pointed out, reduces our carbon footprint. Now, every classroom has webcams and document cameras. Certain rooms have multiple cameras and sophisticated tracking systems to make teaching online as natural as possible.
Federal funding has allowed for upgrades to our facilities that address sustainability and COVID mitigation. This includes advanced bipolar ionization filters campus-wide and reducing ventilation run times to pre-COVID levels. HVAC improvements in the Calkins Science Center, the Student Center, RJF Hall, and Tassel MTech will improve fresh air ventilation to occupied spaces. LEED certification has been earned by Ender Hall, Custer Alumni House, the ATC Addition, RJF Hall renovation, and the Lakeshore campus. Ender Hall has already earned a gold level of LEED certification, and the other projects are expected to earn silver.
As with all CAP updates, we finish by stating how the Board of Trustees can help. We need you to provide support of initiatives that provide resources in support of our goals. We need you to encourage staff to supply the data we need for the next phase of ASHI STARS certification. Please share meaningful dialogue you have had with other colleges and companies and continue to engage us on these topics.
Obviously, thank you for the very detailed report. Board members, what questions do you have for Mansfield and Mary Jo?
I have a statement, not a question. I think it's great that you're starting to look into putting sustainability elements into your purchasing contracts. That is an excellent idea.
Question related to data. As it relates to staff providing or supplying data, is there a smooth or accessible way for staff to do this within the
To
institution?
access data.
Or to, yes, to supply data or information?
So that is one of the areas that we're going to work on as our next, as we're waiting, data governance is the word. And basically, the idea of data governance is trying to figure out what data we're willing to expose and to who. So that's one of the things that we have to work on as our next initiative for this coming year.
I'm glad Sal brought that question up because that was mine too, in terms of what might you be learning from the other CAPs related to staff and students giving data that you might be able to utilize in this particular lane. And so I just wonder about that. Are there
Staff and student data in
So-
regard to,
So one of the recommendations is that staff is providing data related to this CAP, right? And so my wondering is, when you think about your other CAPs and the other goals, are there other ways or other goals where you do see staff giving the data and students giving data feedback that you can extract that process to use for this particular one? That's what I'm wondering. Are there good or leading practices already in the other pathways that might help with this one?
because when we talk about caps, there's 3 caps in this strategic goal. So there's 5.1, 5.2, and 5.3. And so that's where I was trying to get more clarity around a particular cap or just in general regarding sustainability and data. There's a lot of data that we have at the institution, and trying to get our hands around all of it and where it's used and how it's used is an initiative that we're working on.
And when Mary Jo says a lot of data, we have a lot of data, and it's the idea of now, what do you do with that? And how, not only what do you do with it, how do you collect it, where do you collect it? What do you do with it once you have it? And how is that driving toward institutional improvement? And that's,
And even to add to it, to archiving data and making policy decisions around how long we're keeping data and starting to purge that data. That's another area that is a focus.
This isn't really a question, but it's fascinating to think about where we've been these last couple of years with the pandemic, and it was presented around some of the high flex classrooms and lowering the amount of commuters, and we just heard in Lisa's report around how many fewer people are coming in and using the parking ramps and those types of things, right? So clearly that's down. Wondering how we capture that learning, that now that the infrastructure is different, like what does that mean moving forward as we look out the next 2, 3, 4 years, and do we go back to sort of this where we were in 2019, or do we continue to leverage this high flex classrooms and some of these other spaces, and how might that affect how we track this data?
Classes champion those high flex classrooms. He's going to answer that question.
So I think, yeah, space utilization is a big question, especially consider the tremendous renovations we've undergone to make the spaces we use as efficient and beautiful and functional as possible. I don't know the answer yet because we got a fair amount of federal funding to create a number of truly high flex classrooms where if you're an instructor, you can walk in and the camera will follow you. There's microphones in the ceiling, so you don't have to put on a camera. And the instructors who have utilized it have found that students, if they're offering something that's high flex, the ones who want to be present are going to come in. They'll sort of self-select, and a certain number of them are going to be at home. I don't even think yet we know who performs better, if there's a difference. So yeah, it's a tricky question. I don't know that I've got an answer. I don't know, Jim, if you want
I would even say to that, because it's a good question, because it's one that we're trying to figure out. So when you think about pre-pandemic GRCC was 80% in person, 20% online. When March hit forward into last year, we flipped. We were 80% online or virtual and 20% in person. So now the question, as we sit today, we're about 55, 45, something like that, 60, 40. But now the question is what we're doing now. As we start moving out of, fingers crossed, out of these pandemic days into endemic and getting past, getting to what the new normal looks like, what should that balance be? Because something we learned about our students, well, something we learned about our community is that with the massive number of online and virtual classes that we started offering, we actually were tapping into some folks who couldn't reach us before. Didn't even know about them. You can't, it's hard to survey people you don't know about, right? So what that has caused us to do is to have that realization of the importance of striking that sweet spot. And I will tell you, I think we're probably in the same boat that many of my colleagues are. It's going to take a little while to figure out what that sweet spot is. There are students taking online classes today that did not want to take online classes and actually found out that's not such a bad deal. Fits my schedule better, fits my life better. And then there are some that it validated the fact that they do not want to take online classes. And so we will continue the journey to figure out the answer to your question, Trustee Williams. Where is that space, that spot, that sweet spot? What's nice about what this CAP has done for us and the work has done is that it has given us more tools, HyFlex classes, even those not the additions to regular classes. It's given us more tools, given our faculty more tools to be able to make those decisions.
I want to add one more comment. On SLT on Friday, we did talk recap 5, and we talked about people were making, there is a summary making observations about building infrastructure and IT infrastructure and that balance and the importance of both. And so I think it's continued work that we're talking about as far as strategic leadership.
I have a question about the ERP. So, we're going through an ERP upgrade. So I know it's a tremendous amount of work. So let me recognize that right off the top. So could you give me your analysis on how do you guys feel about PeopleSoft? How comfortable are you with it at this point in time? And the second part of that is that using your 3 stoplight analysis, what's the earliest we could do an upgrade?
Okay, so the first question was, are we, so, the good thing about PeopleSoft is they are still giving us weekly or monthly or quarterly patches and updates. So it's not like they're not continuing to innovate in that space. They are committed to that, keep supporting that product until the year 2032. So there isn't an imminent, like we have to get off of it now. We can still be on it while we're waiting to see where the student product goes. Workday is the only student product that I know of that is actually being implemented live, and Oracle Student Cloud is not being released until for general availability until the end of January of 2023. So part of the reason why we're pausing is because if you want to put out RFP out, you got to have, you want choice, right? So that's one of the reasons that we're kind of waiting for more development, because we don't want to buy something that they promise that it's in the product is going to do what they say it's going to do, and then we get it and find out that it doesn't. So that's why we're waiting. Did I answer both your questions?
So, but the 3 stoplights, green, 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 and I couldn't tell by looking at that. Is it automatically going to be 5 years out? Could it be a couple years out? I saw one slide about 10 to 20 years, so I wasn't sure what that meant.
Yeah, so actually when we met in the presentation, we talked about how we met with executive leadership. One of the takeaways from that was Dr. Pink has asked us for a timeline of working backwards. And so we are actually developing that timeline right now, and we don't yet have it finalized because I think partly the timeline is a little aggressive, but we're still working on that piece.
Board members, any other questions? Once again, thank you very much. We really appreciate these.
Awesome job, guys.
Yeah,
Thank
very,
you.
very, very helpful.
The whole team, thank you. Very good job.
All right, so now we're in the point of the meeting where we're going to go to updates. So this meeting, we do not have a student or foundation update planned, but we do have a president's update.
Thank you, trustee Brame. So two things. So number one, thank you for those of you that were in attendance earlier or last week, a week ago today at the legislative luncheon. For those of you not able to, obviously we talked about what that looks like. We had several of our legislators, as well as in some cases their staffers, that attended that luncheon, where we were just able to give them updated information on the college and tell them present, future state in terms of what we project with the college. So thank you again to those of you who were able to attend, and we had really good feedback from those legislators that attended. Exciting times going on. And then the other thing I want to introduce again and ask her to see if she has anything to say to the board. So Brandy Johnson is the new president of the Michigan Community College Association. Brandy comes to the MCCA from the governor's office, actually from the Office of Labor and Economic Opportunity, and even more specific, working with 60 by 30. So her background when it comes to higher education is vast. In terms of her most immediate work in 60 by 30 and working with Leo, but also most noted, I would say, for her work that she has done in this state prior to those, the governor appointment, that she worked with the Michigan College Access Network, MCAN. That was a Brandy Johnson production, and everyone knows in our state who've worked with MCAN, the hard work that Brandy put in to establish that effort to the level it's at now. So we're excited about Brandy being here. I consider Brandy not only a friend personally, but I consider her a friend of GRCC because of her history of knowing about us and her history of just saying, hey, can GRCC help out with, you fill in the blank. So Brandy, if you would, it's good to see you here today.
Hi. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. As President Bill Pink said, I'm Brandy Johnson, and I am the brand new president of the Community College Association. Yesterday was my 2-month anniversary, so I've been here just a little over 8 weeks or so. As Dr. Pink mentioned, I've spent the last 14 or 15 years working in higher education in Lansing. I worked for former Governor Granholm, founded and served as the executive director for the Michigan College Access Network for almost 9 years. Was the governor's education policy advisor, and then just most recently managed the office of 60 by 30. I am beyond energized about this position in this role. I serve as the main advocate for GRCC and its 27 other brothers and sisters across the state, and it's a real joy. I am perhaps appropriately so more optimistic about the governor's budget proposal than your finance officer. And that's what I'll be working on day in and day out to ensure that our community colleges have the resources to do what they can do. And I'll just say, you know, on a personal note, well, personal/professional, but when I served as the governor's education policy advisor, particularly in March of 2020, I really started a new role as kind of the chief liaison to our colleges and universities across the state during the COVID response. It was a really tough and emotional time, and I just can't say how incredible GRCC was every step of the way in working with the governor's office and really just doing business differently, continuing to serve students while making sure that they were safe along with faculty and staff. So literally every step of the way. I think I probably called and texted Dr. Pink on a daily basis, weekends included, for months and months and months. And I just can't say enough great things about how you all have done during the course of the pandemic. I'm based in Lansing, so when you are up for legislative luncheon, please stop by in our office, and I'm happy to keep you updated at all times about what's going on in Lansing. Happy to answer any questions, but thank you. Well, sorry, I should have prefaced this. I made it a goal to visit all 28 boards of trustees in my first year in this position. This is stop number 3 on my hashtag trustee tour 22. I have only been to LCC and Kellogg Community College in Battle Creek so far, and I'm heading to Monroe in just a couple of days. So it's a real pleasure. I always learn a lot during these meetings, just observing your business, and I really appreciate the opportunity to join you here today.
Thank you very much.
Brandy, we
Appreciate it.
appreciate you being a part of our community colleges at this level. It's awesome to have you as part of the family. So thank you for that.
I'd like to know, are you saying that with your connection with the current governor and maybe some legislators that we might get closer to 5% increase in state aid with your influence, with you at the helm?
I will say that there's just a bunch of stars aligned for us at the moment in time. Revenues are just through the roof right now in Michigan. So our sort of economic recovery was much healthier than I think anyone could have anticipated. So between revenues being strong and healthy, between sort of how community colleges are perceived in Lansing, which is a really very positive reputation, sort of who's in leadership, and certainly that it's an election year, sort of all of these things are aligned in the right direction for a healthy appropriation this year, both through the operations increases as well as through the fund that was mentioned for one-time infrastructure needs. Another priority that we will be working on is to temporarily lower the age of Michigan Reconnect down from 25 down to 21 to really target those students. We call them the COVID classes, but these were students that were probably just starting college when the pandemic hit. So students that were maybe 18, 19, 20 years old, to re-engage them into our institutions of higher education. So that's another legislative priority that would certainly benefit community colleges.
Great.
Thank you, Brandy. Trustee Brain, that is my report.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Dr. Pink? Thank you, Bill. So next we'd like to have, do I see Frank out there?
There he is.
Oh, Frank, come up and give us a faculty association update. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good thing that Chairperson Cucci is not here because I don't have a script. And he always
You guys
asks for the script.
Yes, I won't ask for it.
And so I don't have to apologize for not having one. I actually had one written up and then I deleted it without even saving it. And the reason is, what I want to talk about today is the whole issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think this ought to be more personal than just a piece of paper. And the reason I want to talk about it, not because there's an issue, not because this is in response to some incident. In the same way that I spoke to the board a couple of months ago, part of my role is to provide a faculty perspective. Yes, I'm the president of the Faculty Association, but it is also the only elected body for all faculty. And so while we are a union, we tend to play a bigger role in the institution than just the union perspective. And so as a proud graduate of a Grand Lant University and also as a faculty member at a community college, I want to bring 3 lenses to this conversation: the personal, the theoretical, and the applied. And so to begin with the personal is I want to talk about my own understanding as a white heterosexual male and a baby boomer on top of it. You know, being born into the biggest economic boom that the United States ever had. And I wasn't born into anything special. My parents, it was the traditional baby boom generation in that for me, you know, literally the 3-bedroom ranch with 1 bathroom out in the suburbs, the 2-car garage. My father was a tool and die maker. My mother stayed home with the kids. I put myself through college as a first-generation college student, but to be fair, I didn't put myself through college because the government paid for a lot of it, because that's what they did for us. But I stand here as a privileged individual. I stand here as a privileged individual because I am, in this world, a white heterosexual male. I have never growing up had to think about my race, never. Every store that I went into a kid, they had toys that looked just like me. My sister had dolls that looked just like me. When I watched TV, the people who were solving the problems, who were important, they all looked just like me. When I got old enough to buy a house, I didn't have to worry about whether I was going to be included, be allowed into a neighborhood. I could choose where I wanted to live. I never thought about walking through the mall, holding hands with my girlfriend, if somebody was going to judge me because I was holding hands with my girlfriend. Police officer pulled me over. I didn't think about my race. If I had ever gotten taken before a judge, I knew that my situation as a human being would be evaluated, not these attributes that I had nothing to do with, simply the DNA that my parents passed on to me. I know that now. That's simply who I am. So let's talk about theory a little bit, and I'll bring this all together eventually. I want to talk about something that's in the news quite frequently now, which is critical race theory. And actually, I want to go before that. I want to go back to critical theory as a whole. And some of you may know, and it's loosely connected, but it's still theoretically the same. Critical theory out of the Frankfurt School in Germany came out in the 1920s in response to the rise of Nazi Germany, and a philosophical focus on equity, on democracy. And what they were observing as philosophers were suggesting that this is not the kind of world that we want to live in. And critical theory, as I've been trained in it and as I've experienced it and read, doesn't look just at race, although it is a focal point today, but it has always looked at ways in which people in power marginalize those who are not. It wasn't that long ago when women couldn't vote in the United States. It wasn't that long ago, later than when they could vote, that a woman's citizenship in the United States was determined by her father or her husband. If a woman married a person of a different nationality before World War II, she lost her US citizenship. When highways were built, regardless of the vibrancy of the community, they were historically put through Black neighborhoods. Some of them very, very vibrant. Even in higher ed, most people don't realize this, but this wonderful essay that students have to write, those were put in place to keep Jews out of college. Because around the turn of the century, too many Jews were meeting the criteria to get into Ivy League schools. So Harvard, and of course their peers adopted it, put in the essay because it's subjective. And it's easy to get rid of people if you aren't held to a standard. People criticize any of the critical theories, in particular critical race theory, is it's some way in which it's being brought forward to make us feel bad about ourselves, people who look like me. And I didn't write any of these laws. I wasn't responsible for the bridge in New York, which was intentionally made so low that buses couldn't go through it, to only allow people who had enough wealth to drive cars to get to the beach. That wasn't my doing. So I don't feel bad about it, but I do feel responsible today. It's about understanding how systems privilege some whether it has to do with religion or race or sexuality, or you fill in the blank, because it really doesn't matter. They're all socially constructed as being good or bad. But what I do have to realize is that now that I know it, I have to be aware of it, and I have to acknowledge it. And I have to do what I can as a professor at an institution of higher ed to create an equitable environment. So what does that have to do with curriculum? What does that have to do with teaching? Well, it really varies. Faculty are in control of their curriculum. Faculty are in control of what they teach in the classroom. For some faculty, like me, I teach social psychology, race, gender, human sexuality. That's part of the curriculum. I have to teach it. If I was teaching calculus or welding, it could be part of the curriculum if it was appropriate, but probably not. But I also have to be aware of my students, because the diversity of the students who are in my classroom are those who experience this on a daily basis. The diversity of our students and the diversity of our faculty go across the spectrum as well. So I have to make sure that it's a safe place for my students to hear things that make them uncomfortable. I make them uncomfortable with the content of my class sometimes. I know that. I can't just shove it down their throat, because then they don't learn. I have to create the safe space. At the same time, as an institution, we allow faculty within the constraints of their discipline to teach those things that students need to know. I think what's important is that we are Grand Rapids Community College. And I think those words matter a lot. We're in Grand Rapids. That's where we are situated. We are here for our community. And we need to represent our community. But just as equally, we are a college. And as a college, we are obligated to provide our students with that education that allows them to understand and move forward in a way that is positive, so that they can create the world that most of us didn't grow up in, but that we do hope for moving forward. I'm done.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Give us a lot to think about, so I can understand everybody's, because we have to absorb all that. And then I'm sure we'll be talking about that particular issue in one of our upcoming board meetings and meetings as well. So thank you for bringing that to us. We appreciate it.
And I would say this, I don't think you had to come up here and say that.
No, of course
And
not.
I think that.
Well, again, I'm a tenured faculty member. I do have to do very little.
So what I would just say is, that is not easy for people to come stand in front of people while something is being streamed and be vulnerable in this climate. So it took courage to be able to do that. And so I'm grateful for the stimuli of what you said and how it has impacted you as a tenured professional who's seasoned in doing this work. And it is something that we have been grappling with and we will continue. So I appreciate the vulnerability and the perspective. And to get away from it a little bit, we'll also say I had the honor and the privilege of listening to some of staff faculty last week and some of the work that you're engaged in related to continuous improvement. And I just continue to be amazed by your colleagues, how they stand in the gap and how they have, how in the middle of a global pandemics, multiple, that they continue to show up and want to do best by this community, this diverse community, as well as their colleagues. So I'm appreciative. Thank you.
I think my experience is one of the best things about going to college is that you have a safe environment where you can have tough conversations about controversial subjects and you learn from them. Grand Rapids is a pretty segregated community. Often we go back to our homes where You're surrounded by people who look like you and talk like you and have your same experience. But community college, it's sort of like work. That's where people gather together. And it's probably one of the most diverse experience you have. No matter what school you went to in Western Michigan, you come to community college, it's probably more diverse here than what you experienced, right? And so thank you for continuing to
So-
create that safe environment.
Before we let you actually go, the last thing that I would say is, and so what I have heard students say is, because of the diversity of the environment and the conversations related to what you said, they are better prepared to enter the world and the workforce because they have built those competencies to do that and to interact across cultures and differences. So again, thank you.
And I just want to throw in, I mean, I really, I appreciate the support that the college provides for all faculty, the Diversity Institute, the folks that are working there, the speakers that we bring in, you know, knowing how to approach these subjects. I happen to be working in this area for probably 20 plus years, just because of my own interest, but the college has really provided resources, and I think that's important. And I think we all continue to grow. It's situational. And having a place where you can approach people who are peers and or experts in this field with situations that you might not know how to solve is really an asset. It's really important.
Thank you. Frank.
So at this point in the meeting, we look for communications to the board. It's my understanding that there have been no communications to the board.
Correct.
All right, we'll jump to the next point of the meeting. Now we're to the consent items. Now we can approve the consent items. Can I have a motion to approve the consent items that's been presented in your materials?
So moved.
All right, it's been moved. Can I have a second? Second, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, same sign. Thank you very much. We have no items over $100,000, so we can skip that portion. Now we're getting toward the end of the meeting, and we have time for the second public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to make a public comment? All right, seeing no motion to move to the podium, I'd like to ask the board members if they have any closing statements or thoughts.
I again just want to specifically stress to Dr. Jones, the SLT process that I observed was amazing. And I know that it's complicated by COVID and tech issues and things like that, but I appreciated the innovation of using, I think it was Remo that you all used. And while many of the facilitators, because they're so efficacious and have craftsmanship in all areas, but it was their first time using that, reflected on the awkwardness or the newness, their willingness to jump in and use it well, to come to the table and bring other voices and highlight what's working and things that need to be tweaked. It was amazing. I think it helps GRCC be who you are today in terms of your willingness to look at yourself and say, this is where we're good and here are the opportunities to get better. It was amazing. So thank you for the pre-work that you all did and the work that you'll continue to do related to the data, the good stuff and the ugly stuff that we need to dig into. So thank you.
Thank you.
I want to make a comment on state legislation that affects our college and then also federal legislation that affects our college. First, on the state level, I wanted to thank Dr. Pink, VP Freiberger, Provost Knettel for the things that you shared during our legislative luncheon a week ago. I think just based on looking around the room, that they were wowed by what you were sharing with them and what we've been doing here and what we hope to be doing with the Public Safety Center. I think the more we have folks on campus who are making our laws and passing our budget, the better when they see what's going on.
Yes.
So thank you for that. On the federal level, I just wanted to share that I'm going to report a little bit more at our next work session. In my capacity as an associate member of the Bylaws Committee for the American Association of Community College Trustees, the ACCT. I was privileged to go to Washington, D.C. and advocate for community colleges. And I had the privilege of sitting down with Representative Peter Meyer and thanking him in person for his February 4th vote in the Jobs Act, which extends Pell Grant eligibility to short-term training programs. This was fantastic. It passed the House. It now goes to the Senate. And I was privileged to thank him in person for that vote and also talk to him about a few other things that he supports that will benefit our students here on this campus. The first is the Dignity Act that will affect our DACA students. The second is the GI Bill. And then I also had a chance with the MCCA and Brandy to talk to Senators Peter and Stabenow as well. They both also support extending Pell eligibility to short-term training programs. And so there are things going on in Washington that will help our students and help our ability to serve them.
Thank you.
I wanted to add a point to that, and thank you for bringing all of the great points today. I continue to be really impressed by GRCC staff and Dr. Pink and everyone else, the level of preparedness that you have when you come up in different areas of the community. And one of the areas that continues to come up is technology and workforce development and the opportunities that exist currently during very difficult times. And so I'm happy to hear that there's preparation happening around data governance, because as we continue to look at the level of opportunities that exist within specific populations, when we start to take a look at the quality or level of not only serving, but educating folks within the community, I think it'll be particularly important to see what gaps exist and opportunities as it relates to specific populations that may not have access to technology, or perhaps have long awaited for technology to hit their community. So I'm very curious to see how that unfolds. I know it's a big undertaking. It's going to take quite some time, but I think we are experiencing, I think Brandy mentioned this earlier, there's the stars are aligned in some ways, and we're at a point in time where there is a significant amount of resources. So what can we do as a community, as a city, as a county, as a state, to make sure that folks with that haven't historically had access to some of these opportunities do receive them. So just wowed, basically, is my comment to you all. Thank you for everything that you're doing, and keep up the good work.
All right, so I'm sure everybody in the audience knows how much work Misty does behind the scenes to make sure these meetings go well.
Yes.
So thank you for making sure that I was prepared for this meeting, and I think it went relatively well, right? So thank you guys very much, and with that, we're adjourned.
Yeah, let's get a picture with her, because I've seen her take pictures with the others that she's been to with the other boards. I was like, nah, she needs to come to Grand Rapids.
All right, there you go.
Let's get a picture together.